All right. Well, welcome to a special edition of Breaktime Off the Shelf podcast. You have your hosts here, Josh Ginsberg and Brad Godwin. We are fresh off an awesome and invigorating trip to Vegas for CES 2026. I was talking to someone the other day and I kind of called it like a cold plunge start to my year because coming out of the holiday season, it certainly felt like that, jumping right into Vegas for all things CES. My personally first CES. I know, Brad, you've been before, but I know I left feeling energized, just excited for what's ahead, both at break time, in the world of commerce, and just in the world in general, seeing kind of where we're going and getting everyone together. We thought we would come together here and put our minds together and do a little bit of a recap and deep dive on what we saw, what we learned, and where things are going. So excited to do that and get things started. And for starters, I'll throw it over to you, Brad, and see if you have any kind of key, three takeaways, key thoughts that you have coming out of CES.
Well, I think the interesting thing about CES, or formerly known as the Consumer Electronics Show, is that it is no longer just consumer electronics, right? I think CES has become the premier destination for what I would call new things, whether that be new things with tech, so hardware, software. Obviously, now there's a whole new event that's really focused around commerce and media that took place at the Aria. And so a couple of the things were there's no longer a fragmented world, was like a statement of everywhere I went. I'm like, oh, everything is connected. And when I say connected, not necessarily like think of a few years back when it was IoT, like the Internet of Things. And it's like, oh, well, your smart thermostat's going to, it's no, everything is connected. Like what I do, I am now an individual that is fully tech empowered. So whether that be my yard, and that was like a really interesting surprise for me. I was thinking going and showing up at CES, there was going to be a lot around this, typical subjects, TVs, auto, wearables, and things of that nature. I was relatively caught off guard by the number of house adjacent technology. So smart mowers, robotics that were going to work in the yard, smart pool cleaners. Like basically, if you think about it, there was an AI powered technology that could solve a problem of a homeowner. And although as a homeowner, I know that those needs exist, I was shocked at how advanced that technology already is when it's still relatively young. So that was the first thing. That was again, as a dad, as a husband, to go, oh yeah, I don't really love mowing the yard when it's 95 degrees here in Bentonville, Arkansas. That would be really cool. And oh, now it can not just do that, but it can go around my trampoline, which is already a pain to do. And it can, oh, edge as well. And oh, it can go up hills and go down hills. And so just to see, hey, it's 2026, that feels very futuristic, or like the Jetson kind of like thing, or Matrix. But no, that's here already. I wouldn't say it's full commercially ready for mass adoption here in the United States, but the fact that it was already there was really interesting. Josh, as for you as a dad and as a husband and someone that would interact with those types of things, was there anything there that surprised you as well?
Building off of your exact point there, I would say just a takeaway thinking through the experience holistically, and Brad and I got a chance, even though we were in lots of meetings at the RE, to walk the floor for about 2 hours and see all the tech and everything happening, which just shows how AI has become so foundational in everything. Whereas even a couple years ago, it was, oh, we're going to introduce an AI cycle within a laundry machine of an LG laundry machine and so on and so forth. But now it's really table stakes. Whereas any new product being launched and brought to market is going to have that baseline layer of AI as their operating system to connect. And so we saw it where there wasn't a product out there on the floor. I think we saw that didn't have some kind of AI integrated into the foundation and the baseline of it. But as adoption has, continued to increase, as consumers have gotten more and more comfortable, and now we just passed 3 years of ChatGPT being out on the open market and people are ready to go and they're used to it. It's now become normalized. And so that kind of baseline layer is really interesting to see. Kind of building on that even further, I think the biggest, like almost shock to me was to see how much physical AI and physical robotics have kind of come into that market and the advancement over the past 5 or so years. Growing up in Boston, it's been cool to see the evolution of Boston Dynamics, who is a pioneer in robotics. And even actually, I think it was 20 years ago exactly, in 2005, they launched their first like robotic four-legged, which they call the dog. And so like going to the science museum, even like as a kid and seeing the general market one they put out 10 years after that, 2015, that technology has been around for a long time. But the advancement over, the past few years with AI chips and evolution from, NVIDIA and others, and the integrations we're able to accomplish are now we saw robots folding clothes over at LG with like the finite skills needed to do that. You and I watched there's a long line so we didn't get in there, but you could play ping pong against an AI robot. There was backflips and all sorts of integrations and stuff going on. The finger movement was mind blowing. And to see, we understand, okay, technology, you can build and code a website with a tool like, Replit in minutes now, but seeing the evolution of the physical AI and what's happening in that space and how we'll be able to have, robotic companions in our homes helping to connect into the ecosystem was a really big, I think, evolution and a really big jump over the past couple of years to see how much the space has come in those past few years.
Yeah, I think there's a border, going, hey, that technology is all cool, but how could that translate? And so for me, like even as I think about, you know, if I'm Mars pet, like, okay, well, there's things with like when you sometimes when you have a single dog, and I know this because one of my friends is a vet, there can be like anxiety around single dogs not having socialization. Well, now there theoretically could be socialization associated to that. If I am Scott's Lawn and Garden, going, what are the integrations with this actual physical hardware of going, oh, well, now this is not only it's going to mow the yard certain like differently based on if it's Bermuda or a different type of grass. And oh, by the way, if you're using Scott's Lawn Builder, it's going to also do X, Y, and Z. Or to be able to integrate products that are directly into it. Or are they going to start to, I was looking at that going, oh, it's really cool from this random company from Korea, but would they license that tech to Scott's? Where it's now branded Scott's and in the go to market at Lowe's or at Home Depot, it's through a major brand, even though they're not necessarily the ones who own the IP. Starting to think about that as a consumer of like be on the lookout of like how this kind of white label physical and or just software tech comes to commercialization in the go to market, and what are the roles both as a consumer and ultimately as a marketer that I should consider. One of the other things that maybe I expected it, but maybe not to its fullest capacity was this idea of screenless technology. They had the world's first laptop that didn't have a screen there, and I have a Meta Quest and have done a lot in the VR world, which is cool, both with my kids and myself. But like, and my wife gave me the Meta glasses, which we were talking about, which are really cool. But to go in a future world, I won't necessarily need a laptop that has a screen that's limited to 13 inches. I put on some glasses. I now have like an 80-inch that I can touch and move. And what's that going to enable for collaboration, for design principles, for workflow within organization? How is that going to affect hardware companies like an Apple? Like, are they going to create a MacBook? I don't even know what you would call it, where it's just using that technology and it's fully integrated. Is Google going to start playing there? But just starting, I don't know, it was an interesting observation to go, this is something I thought would be 10, 15 years out of this. Like, oh, well, what if laptops, if you said laptops won't exist in 5 years? That's a bold claim. But to go based on the technology that's out there, why would you limit yourself to 13 inches? Like, or 12 inches or 15 inches when you could have a better experience for work collaboration in this AI driven world. And so that was another interesting one as it relates to an employee and someone who uses a laptop every day of like, what are those implications to my work style? And how can then that can be enhanced with technology in the future in ways that it can't currently, or that I'm limited based on restriction of space. Did you have any thoughts on
Yeah, that's a big one.
that dynamic?
Yeah, I do. And I would even say from 6.7 inches, right, of a screen beyond, I had written down as kind of a key takeaway, like the pivot from everything being relied on a mobile device and mobile to a similar concept, but the idea of like ambient interfaces and the fact that, yes, there was the screenless laptop, which we spent a little time talking about together when we were walking the floor. And of course, there was not just, Meta, but all sorts of AR glasses from Asus and Xreal and a bunch of companies. Obviously, the smart ring technologies continue to evolve with Aura and Samsung and many in that space. But in general, as we walked around and as we just kind of thought and processed and heard all the announcements, even like Lego with their smart brick technology, which is now saying you no longer need a screen to interact, but as you put bricks together, they can now communicate. And as you move your Death Star through the air, it can make noise based on those interthings going on. So just the idea that, we're moving beyond reliance on a device, reliance on clicking on that device, and be able to talk, to communicate, to gesture, to use a voice in a variety of ways. I think over the next 18 to 24 months, we're going to see commerce start to move and take shape in that form. And consumers will be able to fully transact, by speaking, by voice gestures, by communication, which a concept that was a new idea that came out, through Alexa that Amazon was powering that consumers just weren't ready for. Well, even, since we got back from CES, NRF has rolled out and there's been some huge announcements from, Walmart and Google coming out with the new, commerce interface and the new protocol to actually transact within Agentic and getting that set up. And so we're really moving to this frictionless world where consumers will be able to see, discover, find, interact, and transact without the need for, to your point, a laptop or a mobile device. And to see the number of devices that were all connected in that ecosystem and allowing that, offering it across glasses to, earbuds to watches to rings, kind of you name it, was really, really impressive situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that whole wearables. One of the kind of statements or provocative statements that I had written down was, will my kids go to doctors in the future? And like, well, you're like, oh yeah, of course they'll go to doctors. But like, I believe I've already started to use my primary care physician in a much different way because I now have access to data points based on my Aura ring, based on my Garmin watch, based on my Apple Health, where I'm having metrics and quite frankly, gamified metrics at that to understand language that I never would have thought about. Like, what's the value of your resting heartbeat? What's the value of not just how much do I weigh? Am I overweight? But really starting to look at the cellular level, what's going on. Hey, I didn't sleep good. Well, I thought I didn't sleep good, but here's why I didn't sleep good. And starting to go like right now, those platforms are not commerce oriented at all. Just like they're just, but I would imagine in the years ahead, if I'm a supplement, vitamin, like that whole VMS category, if I'm a protein company, if I'm a better for you brand, to start to go all the way to like a GLP-1 or any of those to go, hey, you're here. Here's some recommendations of sponsored products or things that would really help you get to the goals that you've identified you want to go to. And so seeing like this wearables 2.0, which I think the wearables technology is really advancing, and we saw it everywhere. There's a lot of different watches, rings, glasses. Here's how this, like shirts that are measuring your heat and what you're doing when you're exercising. But to start to go, okay, well, then how does that translate to brands and to commerce? Because there's a myriad of ways that brands and or retail media networks or others could start to play into that. And so I'm really interested to see if we have this conversation this time next year, is there this physical tech that now becomes a media channel, right? Well, right now it's just a wearable technology, not necessarily a media channel in and of itself, but I think it is with agentic commerce and even the Google announcement, Walmart announcement, everything that's going forward. It seems the trend will be what are incremental channels that could be commerce oriented media based on AI. And it feels like wearables is kind of one of those next things. Any thoughts on kind of your, from a commerce, if you're a shopper, if that's something you would resonate with both now and maybe in the future.
I think so. I mean, I'm have more and more wearables. I'm adding into my repertoire kind of as we go, and things are evolving. But I think the consumer like normalization effect has gone past. We've gone past bleeding edge, and we're now at an adoption rate. If you look at trends where you walk around, I'm in a co-working space today, and like the majority of people have a ring or a smartwatch. You're seeing meta glasses. You're seeing people who are kind of ready to connect and transact on those profiles. So I do think so. I think that also brings up kind of another topic about like system connectivity that I know we spent some time talking about in SAW throughout the show as it relates to ecosystems and how some of these technologies connect from one another. LG, their kind of whole area was really interconnected, and they were kind of showcasing their ThinQ kind of AI ecosystem. I know we talked a little about TCL and we walked through Hisense and kind of saw those environments, but like for me, thinking through both as a consumer and where consumers need to go, the connectivity of those systems being all linked into one, I think is going to be crucial to allow transaction and commerce and just the experience to be more seamless. You mentioned, IoT, which were obviously the terms a while ago, without like that base brain that you would have to program all your connections into with a smart things hub, but it still oftentimes doesn't work. It's hard to have a connected system and one that really works seamlessly from your computer to your laptop to your glasses to the speaker in your room. And so just curious to kind of like your thoughts on ecosystem to kind of go back to that and where you personally see that going over the coming years based on what we saw and kind of where you see the future of shopping.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, one of the questions after walking through some of those large areas like a Samsung is like, okay, well, in the past, consumer behavior and confessions of a husband, we've moved 8 times in our marriage, which is not 15 years, right? So we moved a lot. In the past, you move typically without your fridge and without your washer and dryer. The last few times I just said, oh no, we're going to sell that stuff with the house. Well, in the future, when people are moving, if you've got an ecosystem of smart appliances that are all know you, they know your family, they know the work style, like, are those then reprogrammable and you like hard erase them? And then there's a whole learning curve for the net new person that's moving into the space. Or do you actually start really caring about, well, can these go with me? Because they've become integral to how we function as a family or as a, as an individual if you're living by yourself. And so um, I would say our personal, like in my own home, I have Nest thermostats, but I've got a smart fridge that's not connected into that same ecosystem. And so I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is as a consumer, am I just going to have to lay claim and land on a central ecosystem? Or where will partnership and who's going to be the caveat or the mainstay that's going to allow collaboration amongst ecosystems? Because it seems relatively unrealistic to ask a consumer to choose one and to not divert. Like that doesn't seem like a realistic expectation, um, unless there's a whole new go-to-market strategy around house building and going, oh, you're buying a Samsung house that's everything's been built in the Samsung ecosystem, which again is, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think a majority of American shoppers want personalization and they want to choose something from here and choose something from here and choose something from there. And so then how did those things come together? And is major tech like Microsoft, Google, etc., going to play that kind of connectivity role where you go, yeah, we're all individual companies, but I think with the recent announcement at NRF, you've started to see, wow, there's a lot of humility too from some of these leaders to go, we previously would have never partnered, but we are now because we know there's no better way to create the experience for the individual consumer unless we do. And so we're willing to succumb to some of our differences as businesses for the sake of unity. And so that's going to be really interesting to see not only just with this agentic commerce, but like across the board, is there going to be far more collaborations among big tech than there has been in the past? I would imagine so. But interested to see how that plays itself out. You know,
Yeah, I think we saw some of that happening at CES just with conversations between retailers and brands and technology that you never would expect before. We certainly had a lot of those in our area down in the commerce media kind of content zone. But I think that's a really, really strong prediction for kind of like what's to come down the road. Do you have any other kind of like closing thoughts on maybe one or two predictions or things to watch in 2025 and what we might be, sorry, in 2026, what we're talking about this time in 2027?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm interested in, because it's pertinent to my life as a dad of three daughters, is like connected TV. That word, CTV, connected TV, linear TV, like their TV was a hot button, which is hilarious because like television's been around for a long time, and streaming versus cable. Now you got satellite internet, all these discussions, but it seems like where that used to be a reach and only awareness, that commerce is really stepping into it. And when you've got the makes of a Walmart who acquired Vizio and now has access to hardware and software with Vizio ads, it seems like that's going to be like a main predominant channel. Whereas in the past, it might have been part of a strategy. It seems like it's going to be more foundational as we go forward. So if I'm a brand launching a product, it's no longer running a traditional commercial ad on network television. It's using streaming and or the actual devices themselves that's tied to a DSP to know that the shopper's been searching Walmart.com for TVs, and now you're showing them ads that are relevant to them, that are shoppable immediately. It seems like that's kind of one of the things that I would imagine this time next year we'd be like, oh yeah, of course we'd do that. Why would we not do that? That feels like a really kind thing for a brand to do, where I'm getting personalization directly to me based on needs that I've expressed I have. So that would be the big thing in the commerce world. I think there's a lot of other places, but the creator economy is another one of like, hey, you now no longer have to be a celebrity to have influence. You just have to have a smartphone. And to see people continue to push into that, that's not like a new aha, but to go, as we go forward with AI and creators, the ability to have dynamic, personalized content at scale and replicate that is going to be pretty crazy. To be able to go, hey, this one influencer can now create 50 versions, where it might used to take them with individual takes X amount of time. Now they're going to be able to do that in a matter of an hour, and so as a brand, you can really start to get personalized messaging. And so I think that those were the things that I was really thinking about, is personalization and going to devices and forms in which I'm already consuming in a more personal way to an individual. So that would be mine. What about you, so we're wrapping up the conversation and thinking about again, it was one of those whirlwinds. And so there's so many takeaways, and you could watch 50 podcasts on all the different things that are coming out. So hopefully this has been helpful for you all. But Josh, would love to hear your kind of closing thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we talked about how AI was everywhere and both had that. I think what's going to happen pretty quickly in this year is like consumers are going to get tired of that message, AI integrated. And so it's going to pretty quickly shift to like, what's in it for me? What does this AI powered claim mean? And like, how can we focus on the utility created, the friction removed, the proof in the pudding, quite literally and figuratively, of like how that can help me as a consumer to want to move in that direction and move things forward. So, we saw so many incredible things. And you mentioned the Jetsons. We were talking about seeing the One AI Chef, which was this amazing kitchen appliance tool, which very much felt like the Jetsons, that used lens and AI vision and a 12 megapixel camera to in real time watch the food being cooked with 1,000 different items preloaded onto it in terms of recipe format and adapted in real time. That's awesome. But in order for me to spend, $5,000 to buy that device, I really need to understand what it's going to do for me in my household and how it's going to make that improvement, right? So like the tech is out there, the innovation is great, but what does that mean for me as a consumer? And how can you mentioned personalize and make it relevant and create real utility for the consumer? At Breaktime, we talk a lot about, what to buy and where to buy and like why to buy as a big part of kind of what we try to help bridge the gap on between brand and consumer. And I think with this technology innovation, that's going to be even more so than now. There's still ways to go before these connected ecosystems are in everyone's home. So in order to remove friction in that buying process and allow me to take that step and add that new wearable device without a screen or whatever it might be, how can we focus on the utility solve from a marketing standpoint to really focus on the shopper and kind of what those shoppers are needing? I think this, second big takeaway is it relates to like the retail ecosystem, a place that we play in a lot. And obviously we were out talking to a lot of retailers is how can we like create some connectivity across the needs of a consumer, both in agents, as consumers start to transact across those, but also just create like some shared framework, some personalization, some way where consumers can understand what they're able to get kind of across different retail journeys and create some seamless ability to add items, to check them out, to find out what's most relevant to them, as opposed to having different systems everywhere. How can these retail environments be more connected? And I think we're already starting to see some progress on that with that new, Google Universal Protocol announcement. They worked with over a dozen different retailers to kind of create connectivity and see that happen. So excited to see where that goes. Excited to see more and more partnerships formed across vendors and retailers in the year to come to really put the consumer first and say, how can we find a way to use technology to bring the right offerings to consumers? I know we're excited to be tackling those problems this year and excited to see where the marketplace goes next year. And, we can do another Breaktime special edition off the shelf podcast coming out of CES 2027. It's crazy to say that will be here before we know it, but it certainly will.
Absolutely. Well, and I think at the core of everything, and today just so happens to be Doug McMillan's like retirement party here in Bentonville. So there's a lot of buzz, but a phrase that Doug has been notoriously famous for is we're going to be human-led, tech-empowered, right, as an organization at Walmart. And I think that's what, we try to view that similarly at Breaktime of like, tech is only good if the humans are leading it properly, right? And why that matters is trust of like, I'm not going to bring tech into my house if I don't trust it, right? Trust the outcome of what it's promising me that it will deliver, or the value proposition, or trust that it's going to protect my data and my sensitivity around my kids and other things. And so I think amongst all the tech and all the cool things, it's going, as we go into 2026, I believe it's going to be a year of trust. Can AI earn trust, whether it's software, hardware, et cetera, wearables? Is it going to earn trust? And I think that the ones that do, that value proposition will be scaled significantly. I think the gap is there's a lot of people that might not be that way. The tech's good, but exactly the value proposition to the individual consumer might not quite be there yet for the cost associated. And so really excited to see how that plays out. And, as we look through the year, hopefully there'll be some more updates that we can have some more conversations as major announcements are made. But definitely, this has been a great conversation, Josh. Excited, for being at CES with you and getting to see those trends, but also the implications to our business as we go forward, helping to serve clients in 2026.
I agree more. Well, thank you again for tuning in to Breaktime Off the Shelf. We have a whole slate of awesome guests coming up in the coming months, so feel free to stay tuned and check that out. Hope your 2026 is off to an awesome start, and until next time, we'll see you soon.